Welcome to another chapter of In the Keep podcast. I'm your very own prophet of the drowned god, the Motherlode. This show is all about the world of first-person shooters, their legacies, their lineage, and the people who keep that world turning. It is the will of the drowned god Cathala that our communities band together to frag and jib one another into oblivion for all eternity. So you may have noticed the trend lately where I'm doing like 2 a week and kind of joining them by subject. And we had Dave and then we had Dylan of New Blood. Today we're having Matt Tropiano, an amazing guest. Last episode was James Paddock. Both of these guys involved in Adventures of Square, and I just want to say that, we're trying our best to get you guys some content. I know everybody's shut up in their houses or just bored and not getting the social activity they're used to getting because of this whole pan, whatever the fuck. Who gives a shit? Point being, we're here for you, man. In the Keep is here for you, or at least I'm trying to be, and I hope that you're okay. I hope that your family is okay. I hope you're taking care of yourself and your loved ones. That said, this is a really cool episode. If you are interested whatsoever at all in any way in linguistics, I think you'll really enjoy it. If you're interested in Doom, I think you'll enjoy it. I think if you're interested just in game design or in passion or in, the pursuit of knowledge and craft, Matthew Tropiano is one of those guys that is just absolutely inspiring, and this was one of my favorite episodes that I've recorded, to be honest with you, so I'm really looking forward to the reaction from it. But hey, music this week is another from the Adventures of Square soundtrack by James Paddock and Zazer Asheron. This song is called Incubutter. I hope you like it, and when it's done, we will be in the Keep with Matthew Tropiano.
I guess exploring creative pursuits in a greater way, or at least making virtual worlds and stuff. Doom is just a amazing action game, and it was kind of next in line after a Wolfenstein, because I played Wolfenstein 3D a long time ago on a 286 computer that luckily had a VGA monitor, and Doom was the next game, but I didn't have a computer that could play it until maybe I could say a year after it came out, maybe less. So and then but I played it at friends' places before I had a computer that could run it, and then as soon as I got a computer, I just threw in all the shareware disks just to install it and played it. And the rest is history, because I always liked making maps and mods, and I always liked the games that had level editors in them. So I took to those and just made my own maps in them, stuff like Load Runner and Jetpack and what else? There's just a bunch of those types of things. And I wish level editors make a comeback again. And it looks like they are, at least in the indie sphere. And it's just an opportunity for creative people at any age to start making their own stuff, and it's a really it's a weak barrier to entry, and that's good. That's what we need more of, more things fostering creative stuff.
I agree with you 100%. It's we definitely need more creativity in the world and everything, but that's kind of why I've gravitated towards this community so much, is because that's all it is, really. It's just people within the confines of Doom. We've decided to be extremely creative and make a million really awesome things. And you're one of the leading examples of that. And just kind of the people that you've surrounded yourself with, particularly Jimmy and Josh, those guys are just absolutely mind blowing to me. And I like that these ideas keep getting bounced around between creative people. That's the coolest thing about it, is that across the world, not just within any one, area. It's not like, oh, well, in the San Francisco area in 1986. Like, it's like across the world, these amazing people are connecting about something that they, really feel passionate about, and exchanging ideas and working on these incredible projects that take a long time for basically no profit to you guys other than I made something cool and I'm proud of it.
I feel like there's like some kind of like there's like what's the word I'm looking for? Not clout, but like there's this like there's this kind of I guess when a game as popular as Doom comes out and people start making tools and what have you for it, people just want to make more Doom. They don't want the original game to just be it. They want to make more. And even with the internet in its infancy way back when, you still had people on bulletin board services, that you had to dial into via modem. And those were like really, really old message boards and stuff. And then you had Usenet, and then you had like mailing lists and just through email, and people collaborating on really like all the initial like major Doom projects, or just like making maps and uploading them to whatever FTP was the popular one to upload Doom maps to. And even when you didn't have access to that, odds are you were on a service like AOL or CompuServe or whatever that had file servers that you could upload maps to, because who doesn't, in at least in the mid 90s, who didn't want to have an internet service that didn't provide for more playing of Doom, because like that was the game to play at the time, and it was like it was a movement. It wasn't just a fun game. It hooked people. It made addicts. It made it made like it also introduced people to a larger video gaming scene. Even people that don't ordinarily play video games still played Doom or heard of it at some point. The name Doom is like kind of as ubiquitous as Super Mario. It was everywhere.
Yeah, like my grandmother knows what Doom is. My grandmother has no idea what Quake is, except for me telling her, But Doom is like pervasive in the culture to the point, it's reported on the news. I mean, you really want to get down to it, it probably came down to the lawsuits as well, like with Doom, like it being on, normal television where people are like, this is a problem. And even still, what's remembered now is like, oh, that's a popular video game.
I still remember that photo of Orrin Hatch, Senator Orrin Hatch, holding like Doom 2 in his hands and talking about how terrible a game it was. But yeah, it was around the time in which the violent video games were just sneaking into the market, and then there were talks about like a rating system, and then the RSAC and the ESRB formed, but then the ESRB kind of won out in that rating war, and then then another thing that happened, because like I mean, what was I going to say? Like the violent video game stuff, especially among people that made that, it was like their rebellion in the media war. So like you get things that got like hyper violent just for the sake of being violent. But I want to say that like there was probably elements of that in Doom, but I want to say that violence just caught attention, and I think, it was still out to make a fun game, and that's really what sticks with you years and years later.
To be fair, like I don't think at any point in Doom, nothing ever seems mean-spirited at all. Like I've never gotten that vibe, and I barely even noticed. Like, yeah, the gore and all that's there, and it's gory, but it's not like anything other than cartoonish nonsense. It's the same as
like Adrian. It was mostly like I think Adrian Carmack leading that charge, because like he was like tired of drawing like cutesy Commander Keen stuff and whatever for like all the EGA games that it was making, and he really had his art shine in like the Dangerous Dave in the Haunted Mansion, where like Dave would die in like really gruesome ways if he died in one of the maps. But like so that was just like a whole bunch of pieces fitting together to make something hugely successful and influential.
Basically the perfect game. I remember a while back, QuakeFans.net, where they posted something, it might have been on Twitter, but it was basically a poll saying like, if you had the choice, would you rather have like Quake 3 Arena and online access, and you're stuck on a desert island, you'll have no other human contact. Or you have Doom with no internet access, but you can play every WOD ever made. And I'm like, I'll take Doom 150 million times out of like, and not that I don't love Quake, but shit, like you'll never, ever, ever have a moment at all for the rest of your life where you couldn't play something. Like you'd never run out. It's insane, like how much you guys have put into this over 25, going on 26 years span of just fantastic artwork and a lot of, dog shit that you'd have to sift through. But you in particular, man, I'm going through all of your stuff. Like what are some of the projects early on that you like? Because I've listened to your talk. We'll get to that too. But some of the projects that you worked on in the early days, like pre 2000, even.
Oh Lord,
you've been mapping since before. I think right around the same year my wife was born, like 96.
Wow,
I was 1 year old when you started mapping.
I met somebody. I think I met who was it? Altazimuth. And like years ago when I went to the UK because Adventures of Square. I'm sure we'll talk about that later. Got into like a video game convention called like EGX, and that's in London, and it was in their like left field collection, which was like a bunch of like weird indie stuff that you probably have never seen. And then when he met up with us, and like I just discovered like he was just this 18-year-old kid like 5 years ago. I was like, oh my God. Around the time, like I started doing math in my head, and I was like, oh my God, he was just born when I released Dimensions of Time back in like 98. And or like when I was just started making my first maps, and that it was just like it made me feel a little old, but it also like kind of like gave me that weird frame of reference for like, how long Doom's been around and how long, stuff has been made for it. But yeah, the stuff that I made before 2000, the weird thing is that was kind of like the stuff I made around then was still, I think, the product of my lack of experience making a lot of three-dimensional levels and stuff like that. And then it was also the tool set that we had at the time, because I remember I used an editor called Deep, and that was so editors way back when for Doom usually came in the two flavors of shareware version and registered version. It's much like other software titles back then, and especially Doom editors, because it was really, really lucrative to sell tools that helped you make Doom stuff. Like Doom was so popular, you could make money off of Doom in a very third-party way. I never paid for the registered version of an editor. I still used like its shareware features, which limited me to about 800 lines or 1,200 sides to lines. So that made pretty small maps, and that I still stuck with that limitation. And so did my friend Bill, that I made The Best WOD Ever with, which was released around 1996. So we released like 3 episodes of maps, and we only released that to like AOL's file servers, but I still, of course, kept the file and have it on my website to download. But that was still like a collaborative in so much that like we sometimes would both collaborate on one map, and then just to make full episodes, we kind of took like an episode after the first one. So I took the second episode, Bill took the third one, and we just made more maps and just compiled it all together into a giant megawad and shoved it out onto AOL, and that was that. And then like later I made more maps because like, I was in middle school, so I had like all the time in the world after the homework and everything. And so like I just would make more and more maps, and then that turned into Dimensions of Time, and it was still like the same editor and tool set at the time. And Yeah, I mean, I did get I did get some. I don't think I got any real feedback for the best one ever, but I definitely got feedback in the form of email for like Dimensions of Time, and that was kind of like, holy crap, people actually play this. People actually, there are people out there that play it and want to tell me that they played it. So that was really really cool. And even at that time, though I want to say I felt like I was like, hot shit because like I made like all these maps and people like it and I put it on the internet and that's like that teenage mindset of like everything I do is perfect. I'm and now like as an adult I agonize over every last decision going like, oh, is this good? Is this bad? What do I do? But like it was I don't know. It's nice to have that like confidence born from ignorance, kind of just to be the big motivating factor.
Sometimes you just got to get it out there. You got to finish the product. If the storm's
Yeah,
coming, push that warning, son. It don't matter.
yeah, yeah, pretty much. So like, I mean, like I go back and I play all that stuff sometimes, and was like, oh man, what was I thinking? But then you gotta like remember, you're making stuff to the best of your ability at the time. So like there's no reason to like look at your past work with regret unless you were sure that you weren't performing to the best of your ability. And I think in terms of mapping, I could say that I was still made stuff that I was proud of. So that's it's good to look back sometimes.
So at what point did you start to really actually feel confident? Like, hey, I am good at this. I do know what I'm doing. Or does that day ever come?
You know what? I want to say definitively around maybe like the mid 2010s.
Oh man, yeah. Okay, so a while. Let's keep scrolling.
I mean, like, yeah. I mean, the thing is, the confidence is a strange thing that I've discovered. Confidence is either born from, well, like I said earlier, it's either born from ignorance, like you don't know any better, and you think like what you're doing is great, and because things are working somehow, and that's like one form of confidence. If you don't know any better, there's no fear, and then the second type of confidence, I think, is confidence born from knowledge, that you can suffer a blow to your ego or what have you and still come out unscathed because you have the experience behind you, informing your decisions and all of your all of your decisions you make. So there's, I think it takes time and it takes some failures and learning from failures, and eventually you get to the point where that initial confidence, that boost that like is motivating, and then you have that. Have you ever seen like the charts that plot the Dunning-Kruger curve, where it's like you're learning something and then your confidence like shoots to the sky, and then you realize, oh my god, I don't really know anything, and then it falls all the way down to the bottom, and then there's a slow climb from that bottom as time progresses, and that is kind of I'm on the rise, I believe, that second rise. So there's there's that you're building on a more solid foundation than just that young, inexperienced, cocksure attitude that will carry you through your first projects.
I think there's like a commercial on YouTube maybe right now with Neil Tyson talking exactly about this, how it's like, there's a point, where you're talking about something and you feel that you're an expert, like you are confident enough and that you know enough about a subject that you actually can say, I am an expert, even though realistically nobody really knows anything, especially in his case when you're talking about astrophysics. But
yeah. Like I mean, that's the I only know that I know nothing. Is that wait, is that who is that? Socrates? Plato? Who was that?
I believe that that was a punk band from the 90s.
Yeah. So like so yeah, like yeah, the thing is, if you're aware of the fact that you the thing is, like, if you're hyper aware that you're still learning, then you if you're somebody that kind of like lives on the extremes, like I do, at least attitude wise, maybe, or in thinking about himself, really, there's always that, like, oh man, I don't really know anything, I'm just learning like everybody else, and you forget all of the stuff that you've learned before, like, or I mean, you don't see the progress that you've made so far, and or you become blind to it, and that's still valuable. Like, you know what, a disheartening thing that I've seen sometimes is that people want to, like, even on the id Games archives, and I don't think it's happening so much anymore, but there was like definitely a time where people was just like, could you take this down, this is like old stuff that I'm not proud of, or and it wasn't like content wise, it was just like the maps weren't good, it was stuff like that, and I'm like, why would you want to revise your own history? Wouldn't you want to like show people that you've improved? Wouldn't you want to say, this is where I was and this is where I am? And then when people see that, they become inspired, they're like, holy crap, if that guy could do it, I could, if I take the time and give a shit, I could be like them. And
right, it's the Ron Jeremy effect.
Yeah, it's the Ron Jeremy effect. So history's good, especially your own history, or looking back at your own history just to see how far you've come, and that is, I think, what builds confidence, and that's way more important, rather than like just having that like unafraid to take risks type of confidence. You have a more stable type of confidence when you see accomplishment or see progress in some way.
Side note, that all I know is that I know nothing. That was Operation Ivy. Great band.
Oh yeah, punk band. Yes.
So as we skip forward towards like where you start to, as you say, kind of come alive as early as 2010, I think Scourge of Viscerus, with your delve into some Hex and stuff, but even the Plutonia Revised, I can't believe that's not. You feel like you weren't doing an amazing job on that stuff?
The Plutonia Revisited, yeah, the Plutonia Revisited Community Project, PRCP.
Yeah.
The weird thing is, Scourge was released in 2010. I was making the maps in 2005, and that was and that was because my college roommate played Hexen. And he was just like, yeah, I really love. It's like, oh, you do Doom stuff? I like playing Hexen when it came out. I'm like, oh yeah, this Doom engine, I could probably make maps for that. And he's like, really? And I'm like, hell yeah, I can. So like then I started making like a hub for Hexen, and that's where that started. And and then after I made that and I like got out of college, I asked around. I was like, I want to get back into making Doom maps, because I kind of had like this like. I started making maps for like Quake 2 and Quake around like 2001, and like around like, yeah, I'd say maybe like 1997 to 2002, and then like a few Duke Nukem 3D maps and like 2 Shadow Warrior maps, but they're not even like worth talking about really. And but I still like made a bunch of Quake maps, and then I just wanted to get back into Doom mapping. So like, yeah, that was the opportunity. My college roommate saying that, and then seeing like what other people have done, especially with like source ports as they were around the time. So that was kind of like motivating. There was like, oh, Doom is still new and there's still stuff to make in it. So started making that. And then after I made more stuff and people started noticing I was around again, they were like, hey, you want to work on this project? Hey, you want to work on this project? So like that's where I started collaborating again.
So there's a period where people perceive you as something that you didn't yet see yourself as.
I guess so. I'm because like, I mean, like definitely around like the college era of my life, I was still figuring things out about how I talk to people and how I interact with others, and like all those like regular what the fuck am I doing with my life types of questions. And it was kind of like, figuring out what opportunities I had, even like just with like I guess like hobbies or whatnot, and just there was a lot of of course there's like a lot of unsureness, and I knew that people. I wanted to say like people still remembered that I was that 13-year-old that made that megawad. What? And I played that at some point, and like that was kind of like it was a novelty, and I was like, at the time I was just like, that's some old shit I made. I have no idea why people like this. But then when people started saying, I was like, oh yeah, like Matt maybe did not like have the opportunity to make his maps look pretty like with the editor he used, but he still like had the gameplay down pretty well, and it's still fun to play. And I'm like, oh shit, well maybe there is something here that I've missed. And it does sometimes it does take other people to point out stuff that you've done, but then I'm getting better at seeing that myself. There was definitely a time in which I was that like the everything all this stuff I made was crap, and people are dumb if they think it's good, but like that's just shitting on people that have come up with the opinion that you do good work all by themselves. So it's like you don't want to tell people they're wrong that they're happy. So like I'm way better about that than I used to be, but I'm sometimes it does take others to like open your eyes a bit, I guess.
No, for sure, man. It is what it is, and that clearly you can tell from just there's plenty of recording of you speaking kind of on this similar subject where you expressed that that is something that you struggle with, is acceptance of your own creativity or people liking it even if you don't like it, and being self-analytical. But the other side of that argument is like that's probably why you're so damn good at what you do, is because you are self-analytical. Because some people just stay in that first state where they just think they're hot shit and then they never realize their own faults.
It's early success is dangerous. The early success is very, very dangerous, and I've seen like even in like the indie scene, as I'm going to all these independent game conventions and stuff like that these days, because I finally have the means to. It's interesting to see who's successful, who isn't, and what their attitudes are, like in just talking to them. And there are definitely people that are cognizant of the fact that it's like, yeah, I got lucky. The second thing or the next thing I release will, I mean, of course, we'll get press because people have seen me, but who knows how that's going to go. This can't last forever. And then there are people that are just like, it's like, oh man, how come? This next thing I made was crap. Oh, maybe I should quit altogether. And I'm such a imposter. And like, oh, whatever, man. Like just like the thing is like you can't like dwell on that. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting what the question was. What was the question again?
There wasn't even a question. We're just chatting, man. That's all.
Yeah,
it is. It's not a Q&A session.
Yeah. So I guess it's the early success is still kind of dangerous. But the other thing is, okay, now I remember what. Got to get back on the track. The other thing I guess I wanted to mention was that there is definitely a pitfall in being overly critical about your work, and because like if anybody can, when they make things, they want to refine it to like just a razor edge. They want everything to be perfect and honed, and the experience absolutely perfect throughout. But if you keep doing that, then it'll never be done. You have to kind of be at a point in which you're like, there really is nothing else I can do here, and I'm sick of working on it. Maybe I should release this. And but that's kind of what I do. I really think that the answer lies, just before that. It should be, I think I've reasonably accomplished everything that I want to do, and that means it's now ready to send out into the world. And kudos to anybody who has ever finished or released anything, because that is always a difficult thing to do, because like right now you're exposing yourself in some way, or your work really, to a greater audience, or just it being exposed, and that's, it's there's some vulnerability there. You don't know what people will say about it, and that's always a thing. So like, just be, but that's what where confidence comes into play. It's like, okay, yeah, this is finished, and I'm happy with this. Fuck what other people say. Here you go. Have fun, everybody, or hope you have fun, or hope you experience the things in the way I hope you experience them. And yeah, that's it.
That's a good segue into kind of the next thing I'm going to ask you about, because 2014, I'm officially an adult now. I've graduated high school.
Yay.
You released a lot of cool shit this year, but 32 and 24, is this your first one at that point?
Yeah, the 32 and 24, I think it was number 14. It was the single player one. And that was my first, that was my first one. I made quote unquote deathmatch maps back in the day, but they were absolute garbage. Back in the day, deathmatch map was the cop out map. I think these days people kind of like look down on slaughter maps, like because like, since everybody's kind of heavily skewed towards single player these days, and not so much multiplayer as it was back then. But yeah, like a whole lot of like deathmatch. I was not very confident in making an adequate deathmatch map. So, but I still wanted to like work on a 32 and 24. And then when I saw that one was like a single player map thing, I was like, oh yeah, sure, sign me up. I'll give that a shot. And they said that you could use a deathmatch map from previous 32 and 32 and 24s, but I chose to make one from scratch. So like, yeah, make a map from scratch in a day and then polish it, I think in another 24 hours. So I was like, well, let's see what I can come up with given, a day's worth of work, or like, just a piece of a day, and yeah, see where that takes me. Cause I did some speed mapping before that, and those had okay results. So I'm like, yeah, let's hit that happy medium of a nice chunk of time to think about things and work on something like that.
It's just, that's one of those things where you don't get to have a whole lot of second guessing. You really got to just churn it out and do your best, and you really don't get any say. And once you guys have put it out there, you're not taking it back. So yeah, that's a real test. That's a cool project in general. And I feel like Do and Bones talk about it a lot on their podcast, just in general, without really explaining what it is. But yeah, that you're churning out material, like a whole team of people within, basically 24 hours, maybe 48 hours, as you said.
Yeah, the goal I feel with projects like that is to, get out of your comfort zone, especially with the there will be like, constraints and stuff in each the 32 and 24, or like themes or whatever. But like the main goal is so that you make something with the intent to release it, and so that you're not dwelling on every last little thing and making sure it's perfect. Because like, you know what, I come to think sometimes, and this may be me projecting a little bit, but there's every once in a while, if you do get those people, and especially me sometimes, that like work on something forever, and you start realizing that it's a comfort project. It's not really, you lose track of like what the goal is, what you want to finish, and if things are never quite right, it becomes an addiction. It becomes a comfort to work on something to occupy your time, and especially something that won't be finished, because it still has you have an emotional connection to it, and it's it's like a nice little safe spot for for yourself, and because like, you know, releasing it is like, well, what do I do now? There's that terror of oh God, what am I going to use to take up my time? Yeah, it's good to be forced into the into the mode where, you know, you have a limited time to work on it, so make it as best as you can, because it's gonna go out there. People are gonna play it, and it may not be perfect, but the thing is, people expect that from speed maps, or you know, the 32 and 24 maps, and stuff like that. So I think that one, the single player map one, was a little trickier because, yeah, you have to. There's a lot more play testing than just block out a map and see if duels work really well in it and what have you. But yeah, it's good to be in that in that type of method of creating stuff.
It's kind of like, think back to elementary school or whatever, when your teacher's like, you know, if you're not sure about an answer, go with your first instinct. Sometimes you do your best work. I think when you're not allowed to think back on it, if you just go with that first instinct and you really trust that you know the material, or that you know the skill set that you're, you know, harnessing.
Yeah.
And so later that year you move into, or I'm not sure about later or whatever, but you also in 2014 do this project called Back to Saturn X, which episode 2. This is one of the coolest Doom projects I think that's ever been. I love that. Yeah.
Very vanilla Doom compatible and everything. It's yeah. Shout outs to Essel. Her work is amazing, and yeah, the work that's been done also with not just the texture work, but also music, and just getting all these creative people to make something that probably also, you know, takes them out of their comfort zone a bit, like with, like, you know, new resources, and being forced to use the limits of the original Doom in making really cool things. And yeah, it's a good project. Although I'm sure that you if you've watched my talk, you know that there's some turbulence in working on Back to Saturn X.
Well, it's like, this is a project where you have something in at the finished product, we have 63 maps altogether, I want to say.
But between 2 episodes out so far, I think.
And a lot of people working on it, like a whole lot of people contributing to it. You did one of, if I'm not mistaken here, 63 maps. So
yeah, I did a Blue Shadow.
So yeah, if you don't mind, like, what do you think caused some of that turbulence?
Well, that the turbulence was caused by so a lot of maps needed touch-ups, especially with some thematic elements changing, and my map was a little bit more than touched up. It was like almost like transmogrified by the touch-up mappers and stuff like that, or rather the touch-up mapper, whom I work with on Square, and he's very talented, and he's great. He's a great creative person. Though I think what happened was a miscommunication. It was like, hey, did you tell Matt that we needed to change his map and that you were making changes? Oh no, I didn't tell him. Did you? I didn't either. Oh shit. and that so like what happened was, oh my god, this map changed quite a bit. We really need to tell Matt about this. And then I was told about it, and I was like, what happened was, though, it became that crisis of confidence. And what happened was I was just like, oh my god, there are some decisions that I kind of don't like, but this map looks way better than my map originally was. Holy shit, am I really that terrible at making Doom maps, especially in the medium that I grew up with? Am I do I even deserve to be a part of this project? I remember I had an artistic crisis, and I was just like, I need to think about this for a second. So I talked to what was it? I so I talked to my mom about it, and because she's like a very creative person and worked on a lot of like collaborative projects and stuff for like either art based things or what have you, and I was just like, yeah, I don't know what to do in this situation. I mean, it's changed so much. I told it to her, like, imagine a mural that like required different people to make a part of it. And at some point, touch-ups were being made, and a whole lot of other parts needed changing, and they kind of painted over your part of the mural, and it's not exactly, or it's not the same as it used to be, and in some places a little unrecognizable. And then she went, well, do they still want to credit you for your work? And I said, yeah, they do. And then she says, well, then, yeah, take the credit and, move on to the next thing. So I was just like, yeah, I guess you're right. If they still want to credit me, and and it's still my map in design, although, I would choose to do a couple of things differently now. But yeah, maybe I should just say, yeah, thank you, move on, because it's theirs really at the end of the day after I contribute my work. So yeah, but like the bigger, it wasn't like a lot of it didn't come from, oh, why didn't they tell me if I could have blah 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 blah. It was more along the lines of, oh my god, am I not good? This map is better than I can do, or at least like that's what I thought about it. And so like I was just like, oh shit, what do I do now? And that's where a lot of the I feel like a lot of it comes from me. I put a lot of pressure on myself, I've come to realize, and that was a moment in which I kind of figured that out about myself.
No, for sure. Like, I think this might be the moment, because I think that this whole segment of the interview might have just been in a different universe. Hey, Matt, I really liked your map that you did for Back to Saturn X. And you say, yeah, thank you, man. I'm really proud of that. And that was it. And then we could have but no, I think that's an important moment in your, realization of this is a thing that you struggle with. So that's good.
So I mean, like, I feel like, if this was just a show where it was just like, so like if this was like just like an inside the actor studio, it's like, and then in 2014, you made a map in Back to Saturn X episode 2, and I was just like, yeah, blah 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 blah. But then, there's two sides, man. What most people see is the work made at the end, and part of the process is the person doing the work. And even if you're like, oh, I'm working on this part of the map now, and here's some screenshots, they're still seeing end products or pieces of end products. They're not along for the actual ride, sitting next to you or in your brain or that sort of thing. So I mean, I think it helps to talk about this sort of thing, because of other creators are struggle with that sort of thing. It pays to talk about it, because everybody doesn't want to feel alone. They just they want some kind of like indication that they're not the only person out there that either struggles with something or feels different things. And I think that's why validation is important in a lot of ways. I mean, some people don't really care about that, but I guess I kind of do in a weird way.
I think people who say they don't care about it are the people who probably care about it the most. And I'll admit that myself. Like, on one hand, I'm going to put this episode out, and if I get 1 million people that say like, fuck you, you suck, you should never talk to this guy, I hate you, I hate your interview style, and all this kind of stuff, I'm not really going to internalize too much of that, to be honest with you. But on the other hand, I'm going to be really bummed out if no one listens to it. Like,
right. Yeah. I'm the kind of person that categorizes criticism that's sent in my direction, and there's a bad, like, the thing is, like, people don't want to hurt other people's feelings, but I feel like even if you don't intend to hurt somebody's feelings, sometimes they end up being being hurt, especially if it's about their work, and it's like a thing that they've, that's close to their heart, that they share with another person. It's people are judgy. and there's definitely going to be opinions about everything. That's the thing you learn about the internet. Everybody has an opinion, and so like the thing is, I what I do is I categorize all that feedback, and like, there's the first group where it's just like, you suck, I hate you, go die, everything you make is garbage. Those are assholes. They just want to bring you down. Like, if they don't talk about the work at all and they talk about you and nothing else you can use, it's shit. They're terrible people. They just want to feel better about themselves, I guess. I don't know.
They want validation too.
Yeah.
They want you to respond to them. They want to feel acknowledged. They're looking for a baser level of validation than you are.
Yeah, exactly. They just want a response of some kind, something that validates that they occupy space in the world. But then on the flip side, there's a group of people that are just like, you make everything great and you're the best at it. Oh, I love everything you do. Those people, in terms of improving your work, they're worthless too. But they're I shouldn't say worthless, but I mean, like, every once in a while they're that, like, that bump of cocaine that just like, it's like, I could do anything. That's like the little bit of motivation. But just like cocaine, it's a drug. You shouldn't like all praise too much, or like baseless praise, like just like baseless hate. It's still not good. It's a pick me up every once in a while, but don't you get fat on it. You lots of damage to your heart. So but then like the next group is like, I like that you did this with the controls. I like how the art complements this. I liked your use of reusing space in your map to create non-linearity. Like, when people say like what they like about what you've done specifically, that's like, okay, if I fall off the path of I don't know where I'm taking this at least gives me an idea of what I should stick with and what still works. And then the last group is the people that are like, this sucks, but here's why this sucks. This sucks because it doesn't work with this. This sucks because this. This art needs touching up or whatever. And then from the people that say what parts suck, you reevaluate your goal with the work, and then you organize that stuff for stuff that takes me towards my goal versus stuff that would not fit my goal. And then that's the critiques that you use. So, I mean, and if you do all that, if you examine what people say about your work in a very scientific way, it's hard to feel the emotional impact of what they say. So, that's what works for me. I don't know if that works for everybody, but it works for me, especially when people will give you opinions about your work, maybe not directly to you, but like just like say their opinions about your work, even when you don't ask for it. So just that's me being on my guard a little bit.
Also, within 2014, we get the first episode of The Adventures of Square.
Yes.
And what an incredible... This is the project that kind of brought you to like, hey, I need to pay attention to this guy. You gave me a business card. I was like, cool, I'll try that out eventually. Unfortunately, it took me too long to do that. And when I did, I was like, wow, I have neglected this for far too long.
Well, thank you for playing.
I mean, no, truly, like, it's not like anything. It's just there's constantly content coming my way. There's people who are like, hey, you should check this out, or you should talk to this guy or that guy or whatever. And I can't do it all, but I can kind of follow my own journey into what I decide to get into, and then as I do, pursue the things that really catch my interest. And this is one of those things.
Oh, thank you very much. The Adventures of Square kind of came about because Jimmy was working on like a total conversion for Doom, and I was just like, this is just he released a 3-map demo, and I was like, this is just a couple of resources away from just replacing Doom, and you don't even need Doom to run it. So I was like, I want to work on this. I want to make some maps. This is something cool. So when he released the 3-map demo, I was like, I want to make stuff for this. This is really cool. And then apparently a bunch of other mappers and other peoples wanted to make stuff for it. So we formed Big Brik Games, or what have you, just a loose collective of people making a game. And we it took us about, I'd say, a year and change to finish the first episode, and making sure everything works. But then like we were like, oh no, we can't really release this with all this like copyrighted sounds, or at least I said that. And it's like, if we want to make this like, a bona fide true game, then maybe we shouldn't do the thing of like, just borrowing from copyrighted works, similar to how like a lot of the modding scenes do and whatnot, just like getting resources. So a long time ago, I bought like the what was it, the Sound Ideas General, which was like a whole bunch of like it's the sound library that everybody uses. So I was just like, I can make all my sounds for this and like do some voice acting and all other cool stuff. And I redid all the sounds and what have you. And then as things were getting like busier with everybody else, I started doing like playtesting. And that was like, it was around the time I discovered where we offered skill settings, but none of the maps were implementing skill settings. I'm like, oh shit. Well, maybe one person should figure out exactly what those different difficulties are, so that we can, have a tailored experience for everybody, similar to, what Doom does. So, and then just do a whole buttload of work. And it was a lot of the work was, I volunteered myself into it because a bad habit of mine is like, well, if I don't do it, it's not going to be done well. And part of, especially with my, my official title on Big Brik Games as project coordinator, I have to be like, okay, this person's doing this work, this person's doing this work, and just trust that they're going to do things to the best of their ability. And with the people I work with, I have every confidence that it will be good, knowing all the people that I work with. So a lot of that is me going, okay, I have to be okay with other people's contributions, because I know me. If I have the time, I'll want to do things to fill in gaps. But yeah, that's another thing. Especially if I want to like make my own game and work with people, that's going to have to be one of the things I have to be better about, and that's like trusting the work of others. And because like, a lot of my projects are solo ventures, and that was my way of like, making sure everything was perfect. But like, yeah, the that's a way more important skill. I feel is when you work with others, trust that they also have your best interests at heart. And like, also a lot of that was like also, trusting Jimmy's creative decisions as creative director. And then it was also because like every once in a while it would be like, I should do things this way. Matt, what do you think? Well, I think we should do blah, blah. And then I was like, I'm not sure what we should do. Hey, Jimmy, what does this look right or sound right or whatever? And then it's like, yeah, whatever. So it's a collaboration can get messy, but like, yeah, as we grew more and more accustomed to working with each other, everything goes smoother and smoother. And I want to say that probably meeting the rest of the team in person on different occasions helps a lot of that, because then it like, it makes you realize you're working with people. You're not working with just like blobs of text that appear in a chat server. You're working with people that also, want to do their best, and that's the most important thing to remember.
So this might be a really stupid question, I'm not sure, but why in the Adventures of Square is it E1, A1, A2, A3, and not M?
I think early on, I think that's more of a question for Jimmy. I think that was or very, very early on, a lot of Square's development, I think, was this needs to be different for the sake of being different. But what we kind of discovered later on is that, there's a reason why first person shooter tropes exist and why things are the way they are. It's because one, it's what sometimes is what people are accustomed to, and two, it's what works within game design. Like say like in the instance of figuring out like the health increments of health items. There was like some talk about maybe we should have like a health item that gives you like 7% health, like or different percentages. And we're like, nah, these big and small demarcations exist for a reason. And so, yeah, we kind of worked with our denominations of whatever types of items and health and power ups and what have you. So, but I think that E1 EXAY is a holdover from that era of Square's development, where it's like different for the sake of being different, or I don't know. It's I think Jimmy can answer that question way better than I can, but that's at least my impression. It could be wrong.
One of the things that really sticks out about Square in general is that, first of all, and I think I touched on this with Jimmy a bit when I talked to him, was that basically Square is like a more PC version of Duke Nukem, with like the crazy one-liners and everything. And this is a standalone project. Like, we're not going to sit around and beat around the bush and try to call this like it's Doom. I mean, yeah, it's a Cacoward worthy type thing. It is based on Doom and everything, but we've got a totally different game we're working with here. And just the creativity and the storytelling that you guys have managed to do with this character. And most importantly, to me at least, are the puns. And the puns are unbelievable. This is some serious, like, everybody on this project should, if they are not already, be a dad. So,
would you say they're pun believable?
They are pun believable. It's crazy. And we've got so much. And unfortunately, in the first episode,
they're pun bearable.
You don't get to have a pun. You have Welcome to Squaresville, and then it's Pun City from there on in.
Yeah, it gets a little crazy. I feel like a lot of, I think maybe Jimmy would agree with me that like the sense of humor employed in Square is almost like on the side of like what Rareware does with their games. Like, it has like a somewhat of a goofiness, but it doesn't stray too, like, it definitely gets corny in some places, but not too corny. Like there's this undrawn line that we know that probably crosses into like too terrible. But I mean, I don't know. I'm sure the one line that everybody just remembers, especially at the, you go to the intermission screen and shows you how you did on the map. If you collect like just enough items, like in the lower end of the percentages, it says you ain't no Indiana cones. Or I think that's like secrets. It's one of those. But like, yeah. That's the one that I've when I watch like YouTube videos of people playing Square, that and like streams and whatnot, that is the one line that makes them groan. And so what we had to do in episode 2 is shove Indiana cones Easter eggs in different maps. So yeah, that's fun.
Let's run through a few of just my favorites are like Geometropolis, Wild Blue, as in the cheese yonder, the Butterfort. Like, you guys are fucking killing me with this. Like, there's even some of the songs, it's hidden in some of the song titles. Like,
oh yeah,
like I can't believe how in depth you guys got with this. But I guess it's easy to do it, and it's happening over the course of years of thought, not just like bam. You had to come up with 20 great puns in a couple of days, but
sometimes it is like that, and other times it's like, shit, this is a better name to use. Oh man, so like we gotta throw that back in there. I think our most pun heavy map, though, I think is if you played the first secret map of episode 2, that's Heart of Hexus. Mm-hmm. And where like the map is shaped like a hexagon, and like, or like the main parts of the map are shaped like hexagons. The barns and the houses have these big circular or hexagonal things on them with like painted graphics. Those are actually called hex signs. You could see them in Pennsylvania, like on like the barns of like Amish houses and barns and whatever what have you. And the everything's covered in blue grass, and that's also the genre of music that's playing in the background, and it just gets insane.
Well, I think the greatest pun of all, I can't believe I didn't already list this off, but your secret map in episode 2 is the Great Pyramid of Gouda. I'm like,
Yeah.
Fuck this guy. Like, it makes
It's
me
not
angry.
Giza. It was either going to be Great Pyramid of Chiza or Great Pyramid of Gouda, and I went with Gouda.
The only thing with Gouda is that Dutch people might not get it because they say Gouda instead of.
That's
Gouda.
true. That is very true. So
shout out to Lambo and Ubergawai if they're out there. But.
Shout outs. But yeah. In that map, there are more puns if you found secret areas, and those secret areas are either deep lore about cows and stuff, or they're cheese jokes, and that's what I've encoded in those in that like what I call calligraphy, the calligraphic cipher. But the letters look like writing that a cow would make with a hoof. So I made like, I guess, kind of like just a cipher, and a bunch of the letters kind of like look similar to what they actually are. And I remember there was one person on YouTube named Sapphire Crook, I think, and they played through the map, finding every secret area and translated all of the murals. And that was really cool to watch. And I don't think it has very many views at all. Like probably like it's probably like topped out at like 20 views, maybe less. But I watched it, and it was really cool.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes and try to get that guy some traffic.
Yeah, so I was like, it's like a 40-minute video of them like going through the map and like finding every mural and translating it, because it's translatable, and just going like, it's another fucking cheese joke, and it's just great. And then sometimes it's like lore, like from Moo this world began, from Moo is or like by Moo this world began, by Moo is how it ends. And it's like, what does that mean? So I don't know. It's fun to throw stuff like that in maps and games like that.
So you become the project manager of this. Like, you really embraced this particular game as like, I'm going to really put my everything into it, from what I can tell. And
yeah.
So from that standpoint, you're working with an absolutely outstanding group of people here. Like,
yeah, I definitely am. We're all like Doom polymaths.
Yeah. And so I guess, what is it like being, the manager of such a project like this? And do you intend for this to translate into maybe something else, like of a career wise for you? Or is it just strictly like, I want to be the project manager of games like this?
Well, it's a lot of work, and we're kind of right now we're on a bit of a development hiatus while everybody gets a lot of like IRL stuff in order. Because like this is around the time where everybody starts having careers and starting careers and whatnot. And I was already in the middle of mine, but I have lots of free time, I guess. So it turns into the thing is, it's like, yeah, I have my regular career as a programmer, and then I have this hobby of like making maps and mods for Doom, or making, I guess, games now, and working on other games. Like I also do the sound design for Doombringer and what Christus is making. So but it's like, how I always have to ask myself the question of how involved do I want to be in Square. I was just like, this deserves to be awesome, and at least I have some experience with coordinating who's doing what and what have you. So this is also also could be something to put on a resume, which I do put on in terms of like managing or leading a team. And I still say, like, I only help out with Square. I don't. I never say it's my game. To say it's my game would be terrible. It's really Jimmy's game, And
bands, yeah.
Yeah, and then I and every once in a while I'm just like, oh, I hope I'm not overstepping or overstepping like what the amount of work that's expected of me, or I hope I'm not like, you know, seen as like a tyrant and whatever. Because like that was always a concern of mine, and I was like, Jimmy, please tell me if I'm doing too much or whatever. He's like, no, you're fine, you're still okay. Because around that time, I watched this this movie this movie called Frank. If you've seen it, it's an independent film. It was with Maggie Gyllenhaal and Fassbender. Is it Michael Fassbender? Michael Fassbender, and I forget who had the lead role. But neither of them really had like the lead. But Fassbender. So the movie is about this weird band of musicians, and this guy looking to be a he was a keyboardist for like another band, and he also wants to write, you know, music, but he's not really that great at writing music, and but he finds this band that needs a keyboardist, so he joins this band, and they're like a very like strange, very very doesn't fit any genre type of band, and they're in it really just for making music, not for any kind of fame or anything. But what happens is when he joins them and they go off on this retreat to like make music and whatever, he starts blogging about them and blogging about his experiences. Meanwhile, people are just like, wow, these guys are weird, and then they start, you know, they start getting attention, and then what happens is the goal is to, like, you know, get them into South by Southwest and whatever, but it's the keyboardist with these ambitions pushing the team or pushing the band into places that they may not want to be. And that was something that was just like, am I doing too much? Am I putting too much, like, you know, effort into not effort into Square, but like, am I you know, is this growing out of proportion, or is this still in a scope that Jimmy is still comfortable with, or in a product that Jimmy's still happy with? And he's like, yeah, I'm really happy about it. So like, I'm in my head a lot about like, am I that keyboardist? Am I the keyboardist with the ambitions and hopes and dreams? And am I dragging people along for the ride rather than them being with? We all move together with the ride. So I was just like, oh shit, I hope I'm not the keyboardist.
I don't think anybody sees you that way, man. But
like, the thing is, like, I think I don't think anybody really does. It's just me in my I guess in this case it's like a lack of confidence in like what in like how how I'm seen or whatever. Like I'm pretty sure I have an ego about myself and my work, but it's because I want to do the best I possibly can and enable others to do the best that they possibly can. And in the end, I want to make something I'm proud of and that everybody can be proud of. And I tell them that every day. I was like, when we released episode 2, I was like, everybody here should be absolutely proud of the work that they've done, because this is fucking amazing. And all of you should be very happy that we have pushed this into the world.
So what about this Team Rocket project that's been going on for a while?
Team Rocket kind of was started on a whim by Dragonfly, Jimmy, and AD. And that was, and I think it was they were just going to make a megawad in a day, like just marathon style. And or like, you know, people have floated the concept of marathon mapping, see how many maps you could do in a sitting, or make like a small episode of maps in a sitting. And and they were just like, we're going to make a megawatt and it's just us three. And at the time I was unemployed and between jobs, as it were. And I was just like, you know what? Fuck it. Can I join, guys? Because I don't know if you guys are going to make 32 maps with just 3 people. Might be easier with 4. And then they were like, hell yeah, sure. So I joined that, and then they also had like guest mappers on because I don't know. I was like, I wasn't too keen on like just being up forever, especially since it started around where my bedtime is here on the on the East Coast of the United States. So yeah, I was just like, okay, I'm gonna make a map, and then I'm going to sleep, and then when I get back up, I'm gonna rejoin you guys. So yeah, it was fun to do, especially since I had all the free time in the world to do it, and yeah, and I liked the challenge of not dwelling on every last little detail, and you kind of do in the first map. But then you quickly realize, oh shit, I have to manage my time way more carefully if I want to make a bunch of maps instead of just one really, really good map. So it became like, a speed mapping session in which you're managing a chunk of time rather than just the amount of time in which the session happens. Right. And then it kind of went on for like another day because I decided to like make the map 30 required a little bit more effort, and I was just like, I can finish that up the next day, and appropriately so. Team Rocket 1 happened the day before Summer Games Done Quick, that charity event with all the speedrunners and stuff like that. So that was fun, and yeah, and then we did Team Rocket 2 earlier this year in 2020. So I think it was in February. So yeah, the first beta is out, and then I think we just need to do some tweaking and fixes, and then we'll release it proper soon. Don't quote me on that. I have no idea if we're going to release it soon, but it'll probably be soon.
Watching you guys do that on Dragonfly's stream is just like, and it's, oh God, how long have they been awake? And I go to sleep, and then I wake back up, and I'm like, oh, they're still doing this. Like, it's insane.
Around the end of it, you do get loopy, and I remember like around the last couple of maps, I'm like, whatever, fuck this map, it's good enough. but yeah, every once in a while, it's good to just test your abilities and get outside your if you get outside your comfort zone, then you can only improve. Nobody improves unless they're challenged. So challenge yourself.
So last journey will go down before I turn you loose, man. I know this has lasted a lot longer than we originally anticipated, but
I don't mind. I like speaking.
Me too. How did you get involved in Doombringer?
So Doombringer came about because Christus was a long time mapper in the Doom and I guess also Quake scenes, and he's like, I'm making this arena FPS, but I need a sound designer. And he posted it on Doomworld, and when I saw that, I was just like, oh shit, I want to also get into sound design since I did that for Square. Because like around that time, I was like, I don't know if I want a career change, or I was like, like maybe do I want to do more creative things or what have you? So I'm just like, I should start putting together a portfolio. This is another sound design opportunity. So I was like, hey, I would like to work on this. Here's, I did all this sound stuff for Square, and he was just like, okay, yeah, we'll bring you on. And then I did a lot of the sound effects for Doombringer, and there's still much more to be done, in up to and including inventing a spoken language for all of the enemies. And I think that's something I chose to do just to make them a little bit more alien, but also a cohesive cultural unit. And that's come with a lot of interesting things, because I've always liked linguistics. I've written 2 scripting languages, and that's just for programming. But I also fell in love with speaking languages and patterns and whatnot, and that's so started inventing a language for it. And
So I want to touch on this actually pretty in depth, because you mentioned this about the pyramids, and that kind of originally sparked my interest in this. But also, Christus mentioned that you were doing this project. Are you a Lord of the Rings guy at all?
The thing is, I've never read J.R.R. Tolkien's novels, though I did see the movies. I didn't read the books, but I definitely feel that Tolkien was the kind of guy who would just invent languages. And he was like, well, I got to put this to use someplace. I know, I'll write stories in which they're spoken.
So Tolkien was in the military. He was a
World War I.
Yeah. A cryptologist, or whatever you want to call it. And that there was a time in my life when that was going to be my career path. And
really?
It did not happen. And we can talk about that some other time. But I also have very good friends who do that. Like they're cryptolinguists. One of my best friends right now is studying to get his master's in linguistics. And so this is a subject that's come up on the show before, and I'm really into it in general. Just it's been rotating around my life for a long time. So when you get into this sort of thing, I'm curious, like what is your endeavor, and how are you studying or applying, and what sources are you looking at to try to create a language?
Well, my first foray into linguistics was a elective course I took in college called Intro to Linguistics, and I liked that so much because it was still like very logical, and it was eye opening in terms of. So I was also like kind of like dabbling in writing scripting languages and stuff like that like computers can interpret, and then they do other things. So I wanted to see the spoken language side of things, and I was pretty good at like principles of programming languages and the sorts of classes that teach you about grammar and universal grammar, and Noam Chomsky's name sneaks into a lot of places because that's what he did. That's what his discipline was. So there's a whole lot of associated crossover with computer science and linguistics. And I was just like, and since I took to that language-oriented stuff really easily, like language and logic, and finite state automata and whatever, and assembling things together, I took to that really quickly, and it's always been an interest of mine, and how language evolves over time, and why the words we use are those words, and why our turns of phrase are the way they are, and just like looking up the history of spoken languages and programming languages, and how those evolved over time with in the computer world with like ways to express, like to turn ideas into procedures. And in the speaking world, it's how do we convey ideas in such a way that other people understand those ideas. It's the transmission. It's language is used to transmit from the abstract bullshit that happens in our brain into a concrete form to put in either other people's brains or make a computer's brain do something. So it's always been something I was interested in. And so I was just like, part of this sound design stuff could be also inventing a language. And so that's, I was like, yeah, the enemies should speak a actual language. So I started writing a language using the knowledge that I gained through doing other linguistic stuff.
Man, you should have just done what they did in that comic book Saga and just stolen Esperanto because no one speaks it.
That's a good idea.
No, I'm kidding. Yeah.
Nobody speaks Esperanto.
Yeah.
But yeah. So like that's so I started coming up with like grammatical rules and language rules and stuff like that, and how the grammar works. And yeah, I mean, right now I have the spoken part, but now I need to invent the written part. Like, how do I? And I know kind of how I want the written language's structure to go, because the same sounds get stuck together, and there's definitely a phono and morpho syntax to all of the words. So the writing system should kind of describe that in terms of translating writing to the speaking parts. So I have to work on that, and I'm getting closer and closer, but I haven't really figured out like a glyph system that looks nice.
Yeah.
so that's the hardest part. That's
Cow
where
hooves.
yeah, I should re-borrow what I did for Square. And I was the part of the thought is writing tools, but I think in this case it's not as important. So it can get a little abstract enough such that it can still be drawn and translatable if you don't already know it. But yeah, it's one of the first things I did after I came up with like a syllabary and vocabulary so far is try to translate. Have you ever watched the show BoJack Horseman on Netflix?
Oh yeah.
I translated the outro to the episodes. That song they play back in the 90s. I was in a very famous TV show. That song I translated into the forbidden tongue.
So next time you're in southeastern Arizona, you and me are gonna grab some beers, and then we're gonna head up to the U of A and see if we can get you in with Noam Chomsky. Like,
yeah, he'll be like, "Oh, finally, somebody that doesn't want to talk politics."
Yeah, but I feel like if we actually wrote him and be like, "Hey, we're doing, I'm just some guy, a journalist who's covering this, but you say like I'm working on a video game and I need to create a language from scratch for or whatever," he might actually be interested in that.
Oh, I mean, I hope so. But it's like, you know what? I remember at one time when I was back in Rutgers University. Like I say that like it has any prestige. So when I was back in Rutgers, I heard from other people that like Noam Chomsky might be making an appearance in one of our auditoriums. And I was like, oh shit. Oh, that's cool. I heard of this guy. I might want to ask him about L1 and L2 acquisition and how he formed his theory of universal grammar. And then people will be like, what? No, we're going to talk about politics. And I'm like, it's boring. I don't want to talk about politics. And I discovered that's what he's like known for in the greater, like his activism in politics. And I was just like, what about the shit that he did as a professor?
Like him and Sam Harris, I'm like, could you guys just talk about science? Like, please. You're the two like greatest minds in the world, and all you do is argue about fucking left versus right wing nonsense. Like, well, that's fine. Like, there's a place for that, but I want to know the deeper stuff. But anyway, hey, Doombringer, you're working on that. Cool. Yeah.
So like, the whole outro to BoJack Horseman is translated and singable. It might make it into maybe an Easter egg somewhere in Doombringer, but yeah, it's there.
That is wonderful, man. Well, is there anything else you wanted to touch on before we get out of here, dude?
Well, you mentioned the talk I did in 2016. I was around I met this guy named Jake Tucker, who is he works in video games journalism, and he started this thing called Video Brains, and I hope he starts it back up again when he I guess finds time and funds and what have you. Where he had like a bunch of people talk about video game related stuff, and I met him at a games festival, independent games festival called Amaze when I was in Germany once, and we just like talked a lot about Doom, and then I was in my globe-trotting like I want to travel more type of mindset, and he was looking for like open applications for doing, a wild card type of talk for like a certain month in 2016. And I was like, oh, I should pitch a talk. And like the first talk I pitched was like about like what I talked about earlier this evening about like feedback and what have you. And then he was like, oh, that's a cool idea. And then later on, I was just like, no, I thought of something a little bit more personal that I want to talk about. And that was like, making stuff for Doom, but instead of Doom related stuff, it's going to be what I learned about making things in general and like using Doom as a backdrop. And he was just like, oh, that's a really cool idea. And most people, they do their talks in 15 minutes. And the reason is, people zonk out around like the half-hour mark. So like if he's like, keep the talks short and punchy. And I didn't know that because I already asked him. I said, I think what I'm going over like 20 years of my life is going to take 30 minutes. Could I do more than 15 minutes? And he's like, yeah, sure. And then when right before I went up to do the talk, he's like, are you ready? I'm like, yeah, I'm ready. And I'm like, oh man, how many? I was like, yeah, all the talks have been pretty short. And he's like, yeah, you were the only person that asked for more than 15 minutes. And I was like, well, this better be good, I guess. And it turns out it was. So yeah, that was a cool experience, and I got to see a bunch of people that I saw before, but like, got a chance to see again. And I really wish I have more opportunity to do that. But, coronavirus keeping everybody indoors
well,
at the moment. It'll get better, but like, yeah, I can't wait to start traveling again because I haven't in a while because I started a new job and everything. But
yeah,
it should get better. Sky's the limit, man. Sky's the limit.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say, basically. Like, if you keep doing what you're doing, you will inevitably have to have some sort of people put their eyeballs on it, because this is such a wide spanning and yet like so specialized in the same way resume. Like, Rick, you've got a lot going on. You've got sound design, you've got, project management, you've got game design in general, you've got level editing, level design, texture, everything falls into this category. Working with musicians, working with like everything. So
the thing though, I usually tell people when we talk about the sort of thing like success and just making stuff is, I mean, it's very very luck based, and or at least I think it's a cycle, but it always starts with luck. And either you're born someplace or with whatever the socioeconomic status and what have you, and then like it's like, okay, from where I am currently, I have some choices, and then you make a bunch of choices, and then you see the outcomes of those choices, and that feeds back into your current set of luck. And because like the thing is, if you make something and you don't show anybody, nobody's going to know about it. But even if you like show it out, shove it into the world where anybody can see it, and despite maybe you tell people about it and whatever, you may not get that break. It's still luck, and it still comes back down to luck. So, but the nice thing is, as long as you keep making stuff and want to make stuff, eventually you'll have some kind of a break. It may not be the huge breaks that people get with like, oh, they made the game that made millions of dollars and everybody just, it could be like small things. It's like somebody that you like the work of goes, hey, you want to collaborate on something? And you go, oh, sure. And stuff goes out from there, but it's still luck. And there may be bouts of bad luck and there may be bouts of good luck, but the true failure is stopping.
I think that's a good place to end it, man.
Yeah.
Let's get this bad boy edited, sent out, and wait for some validation.
Sounds great.
right, big thanks to a lot of people for getting this episode together. First of all, I gotta thank Human Bones and Dew for hanging out with me at QuakeCon and introducing me to Matt in the first place. Then I want to thank James, Paddock, Dragonfly, and Christus all for having my back and getting Matt to actually pay attention to me. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, say no more. But no, seriously, I love you guys. Thanks to Matt for doing the episode. I really appreciate that too, man. It was a great one. I'm so psyched about it. And we got to say thanks to all of our Patreon supporters, all of the people who give through our PayPal, who buy shit through our Amazon feed, who've bought t-shirts or whatever the fuck. It doesn't matter. Hey, if you subscribe, once you subscribe for, whatever number of weeks that gets you to that $25 point, we'll mail you a t-shirt. So if you want the Keep t-shirt, just do that, whatever. Point being, we're here for you guys. We really appreciate all the support, and we want you guys to have a good time and enjoy all these episodes. So please do not fucking ever for a second think that you're alone in this world. I know it's bleak and scary right now, but you're not alone. The Keep is here for you 100%. So stay tuned. We'll be back next week with yet another slew of amazing guests. I can't wait for you to get a chance to take part in some of the cool conversations that I feel very privileged to have taken a part in. Also, I know I promised you guys more news about that event that Devastation was hinting at, but unfortunately the schedules have been changing a little bit. I will let you know more about that on the next episode, I promise. Kind of. But no, seriously, stay tuned. See you then. And until next time, y'all, please stay in the Keep.